Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toy List of Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. I'm back with you for another off-season breakdown bonus episode. This one, the New Orleans Saints. As you can see, we got a couple of familiar faces here on the screen. We got my right-hand man here, George, here to help co-host the show and ask the guest, Maddy Hudak of ESPN and of a lot of other different places. We're going to let her talk to you about that in just a second, but a very busy person taking out time here for us. But stick around because we're about to find out who dat. And now for our guest, Maddy. Maddy, thank you very much for coming on. You guys can see the information down there at the bottom. Maddy, I always forget at the end of the show to give you guys the opportunity to say a little bit about yourselves. So I like to do it at the beginning of the show. So other than them looking at where they can go to get all your stuff, to get all of your content, could you please give the people a little bit information, especially about that show that dropped yesterday that they can see right down there at the bottom, because that was some insight on some injury stuff that I feel like they need to hear.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Maddy Hudak. I am Tulane sideline reporter. I wear a lot of hats as depicted in the graphic below. I report on now OTAs and minicamp and training camp on ESPN Baton Rouge 104.5 ESPN. And I am, yes, the host of my new show, Before the Whistle, just looking at things that go on before the snap, if you will, and bringing in things like psychology and just context, things I've learned in the scouting realm. And as you mentioned, my injury-riddled background has awarded me some unique insight on a lot of lower body injuries that I hope to shine some light on, including how little things that we might not think of, like NFL rule changes that don't immediately point to player safety, can all kind of snowball. So I'm here for the rabbit holes.
Excellent. I appreciate that very much. And then it says down there, the sideline reporter for the Green Wave, Tulane University, obviously. So how long have you been with them?
Yeah, and I wanted to say I've always appreciated you guys for promoting Tulane last season and your whole network. I've been there now. This will be my third season going in. So my first season, they won 2 games. My second season, they won 12 games. I don't really know where to go from here, but happy to be here for the ride.
I don't know, but I think it kind of goes hand in hand that Maddy Hudak is making a name for herself and growing just as Tulane University is as well. I don't think that's a coincidence there. So so I think you're doing a great job over there. And this is all thanks to Nino as far as the support for Tulane University, because I'll be honest with you, never been anything on my map, but Nino has found this team, and it's been something special. It's been so awesome to be a part of watching that grow this offseason. I know this isn't a college show, but guys, we just wanted to throw that out there. If you're like me and you're only a novice college football fan, and you have a team that you want to start rooting for, this is a fun team to jump on right now. And the NFL is finally starting to recognize it just a little bit. But
I'll say, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to jump right into the New Orleans Saints. That's what we're here for. The New Orleans Saints offseason breakdown. I'm not going to bury the lead here, guys. The New Orleans Saints needed to make one big particular move this offseason. They went out and they got their guy. They got Derek Carr to help out with that offense. It's obviously the biggest offseason move. What does Derek Carr, Maddy, what does he bring to the table to help bump up this offense a little bit more and maybe make them a little bit more relevant this season?
Well, he just seems to have kind of the holistic role of quarterback down in a way that I don't think we really we're able to see out of Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. Last year, it's not like they designed an offense for Andy Dalton necessarily. Never really felt like there was something that played to Jameis Winston's strength either, but it's really hard when he didn't get a full season either way. But I didn't know that much about Derek Carr going in. I've watched him play. I actually remember him playing fairly credibly against the Saints a lot of the time in recent years, but also being from the Bay Area, I'm aware of the dysfunction that has existed in the Raiders organization for so long. And I kept that in mind too in my kind of postseason analysis of Dennis Allen and all of the moves that he's made this offseason to really, I think, turn the ship around. After stepping into what I think are massive shoes to fill, when normally you're stepping into a head coaching job because someone got fired, not one of the best head coaches ever decided to leave, and then you have to try to follow up still without a quarterback. So just that sense of things, I don't know how to describe it. There's just a feel in the air that things are the way that they're supposed to be. And for that to be this type of feeling in May and June when this will be my third training camp that I'm covering for the Saints. And both years have been very odd between the quarterback competition. And then last year they went with Jameis Winston, but they had made that huge swing for Deshaun Watson in the offseason. So knowing that that wasn't necessarily what they were taking away from the season before and deciding to roll through it, it just feels deliberate. And he's made a lot of position groups look better already.
So outside of Derek Carr, what would you say would be the biggest or most impactful free agent signing for the Saints?
Foster Moreau, I think, would probably be the answer. Just what an incredible story. I was just talking to him. It's hard to fathom that this all just happened in the last few months and he's out there on the practice field. It's legitimately unbelievable. But the thing that I think Derek Carr really brings to the Saints that they've been missing in these last few seasons is that kind of short, intermediate passing game that has worked really well. And I think they built seasons of personnel now to kind of complement that. And again, we haven't really seen them change personnel elsewhere on the team through these last few seasons of quarterback. So kind of going back to I think the basics and the system that Pete Carmichael was using with Drew Brees. But I also think that Derek Carr just offers a layer of being able to kind of put things back and make things a little more creative, but just his immediate chemistry with Foster Moreau stands out, and really all of the tight ends, and really taking his time to go out and distinguish, what passes make the most sense for each player, depending on their role and just depending on, their personal desires, I guess, to where I could point to a few free agency signings, but I think when I'm talking about most of them on offense, it really, again, unless they're on the O-line, which they're not, ties back to the quarterback. So there could be someone else that I'm totally blanking of, but that's who I'd go with off top.
No, I like it for sure.
I want one quick follow-up with that because you mentioned the tight end group. You mentioned Derek Carr. What are the odds we're going to see Derek Carr get pulled for Taysom Hill at some point at quarterback this coming season?
Pulled, I guess, is up for interpretation. I think, honestly, when you're not fighting for the job out there, it's kind of fun to just think, like, what is this team going to do with Taysom Hill? Like, I think Derek Carr knows that he's not a mobile quarterback, and it's probably somewhat relieving to have almost this person that can slot in and do the kind of things that you're not that adept at doing, doesn't have the body type. I mean, even though Taysom Hill seems to have lost some upper body weight, he's worked out with the quarterbacks one day, then he's worked out with the tight end. If I was them, I would just kind of turn him into a running back full time. I just think he has the vision and those short yard gain abilities. But I think it got a little annoying the last two seasons with fans because he was in that quarterback competition and that really angered a lot of people. Even though there wouldn't have been a competition otherwise because it would have just been a one-man show. But I think that seeing the difference he made in games last year and then seeing him kind of get pulled and those games not really going that way, I think there's going to be a lot less arguments when Taysom comes in, unless he throws an interception.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes to what the quarterback room looked like last year. I've been big on Taysom Hill the last 2 years for fantasy purposes. This is we started off as a fantasy-centric show. We don't have to comment on fantasy football, but for fantasy purposes, I've been big on Taysom Hill the last couple of seasons because of that quarterback room. And now I think it's very obvious and clear-cut that you have your QB1 and nobody expects a competition. But I'm with you, George. I'm excited to see how they can use him as a gadget guy finally, for sure. But my next question anyway, is about Chris Olave and that wide receiving core, because Chris Olave is a guy that I was really big on coming out of college. And he was one of only 2 rookies to have 1,000 yards last season. And that's with the quarterback room being what it was. I can only imagine the elevation that Chris Olave is going to take this season, but it would help out a lot if he had that guy off on the other side. And I know you talked about Michael Thomas a little bit yesterday on your show. Again, that's Before the Whistle podcast. But you talked about him a little bit yesterday. If you could maybe give a little bit of your perspective on Michael Thomas heading into this season.
Yeah, and just to kind of emphasize how incredible what you mentioned about Chris Olave, it's the fact that that was originally supposed to be a group of Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, and Chris Olave, and it was really just Chris Olave all season, and that's a trap the Saints have fallen into in the past, and you could get away with it with Drew Brees having just one wide receiver and then not really any other options, but the fact that he was able to do that as a rookie and not be someone that is the same size as Michael Thomas when he was, I think, a little more in shape, not to say that he's out of shape, but he definitely looks a little smaller. That happens. You lose muscle mass when you are injured and can't do things, but he's been out there. It was a surprise to see him at all. He kind of came out randomly and he wasn't actually participating in any drills or anything, but you never really see the quarterback room just go off to the side and work with a wide receiver. I guess when it's Michael Thomas and this is the situation you're in, that's a really important relationship for Derek Carr to have with him. But I do worry about kind of not like the pressure, but it's hard, I think, to have injury discussions around players that have missed a lot of playing time and taken up a lot of money in doing so. Now, that being said, he's completely readjusted his contract, which he didn't have to do. It's all wrapped up in incentives now. He could have just allowed them to cut him. And I'm not the cap person, but I'm pretty sure that he helped the team out here. And to kind of go from the surgery mishap to what they're at now, all I know is when I saw him in training camp last year, you could immediately tell that he is just different than a lot of guys and really just almost impossible to guard in a one-on-one setting. So I think if nothing else, even if he's not at his huge level of prowess, just for the decoy factor alone of being able to have more than Chris Olave out there. But I think, again, that's where that tight end room comes into play and potentially some pass catching from the running back. So it just feels like a lot more things are working in the Saints' favor this year than against them, which makes all these kind of, I think, smaller things a lot more magnified.
Oh, yeah. 80% Michael Thomas is still a wide receiver one for more than half of the league. Absolutely.
So you did bring up, well, you mentioned the running back room. Let's start there with Alvin Kamara. What's the current status with him? Are we, or I say we, but really are the Saints expecting him to miss any significant time to start the season? And if they do, how much of a role will the rookie Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams, how will those two have to share that backfield?
It's hard to say at this point. I feel like every season, I mean, honestly, unless it's, I think, like an active issue, whereas this is kind of, they've moved towards this process of letting court processes play out before imposing discipline on players, which I tend to overall agree with. I don't understand, the NFL investigative process that much whatsoever. That being said, it has kind of led to this. This was a conversation we all had last offseason, assuming that the suspension would come down and then they delayed the court date. I don't know what's on the schedule, but I presumably is going to be suspended for a couple games. I mean, I'm not going to try and defend physical violence, but yeah, that room has been an issue, Alvin Kamara or not, especially because they hadn't really used him in the way that we saw him really excel in on the Saints his first couple seasons as more of a kind of dynamic pass catching back. It might have just been a byproduct of the fact that running back room was just sad last year and Mark Ingram was really using up all he had left. So they get a younger guy in Jamal Williams and similar enough style to, I think, Mark Ingram, and just not putting Alvin Kamara in those running between the sticks kind of roles. And Kendre Miller, we unfortunately haven't seen anything from because of the fact that he has been hurt. But again, we're in June. The season doesn't start until September. And I just think a committee of running backs in that back just to get the load off of Kamara. And I think that includes Taysom Hill to a degree. I think it's something that they would definitely be able to account for in a few games, but the way they've been using him in this offseason, it would be sad to kind of miss because he's really been making third level routes and really just impressive back shoulder catches that seems like he's been working on that skill set. So I'd like to see it.
So we got a lot of clips from Jamal Williams when he was with the Lions doing his interviews. How awesome is it to be able to interview him and the way he goes about, carries himself, and answers the questions to the reports? That's got to be awesome.
Oh, it is. But there are a lot of Saints players that are just kind of funny to talk to. But yeah, I just, he has his anime. You love all those kind of little interests that he has. I think he was a necessary infusion of lightheartedness and fun. Again, it's not like anything desolate has happened, but I think the mood has been a little morose for the last 2 years just because, again, these are a bunch of competitive guys that were used to going to the championship game or the playoffs years in a row and then having a losing record. So I think just kind of getting back to the basics there, but it helps when you have personalities like Jamal Williams in there. But it does just seem like there is an all-around air of I don't know what lifted, but it feels more serious and more light at the same time, in the sense that I think the air of them taking it extremely seriously at this point is apparent, but not in a fear-based sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I kind of want to move on to the offensive line, because that offensive line a few years ago, like 2017 to maybe 2020-ish, they were a pretty dominant group. We've not seen that the last couple of seasons, and I was kind of thinking headed into this draft that they were going to lean more towards that offensive line, and they didn't pick up an offensive lineman until the 4th round out of Old Dominion. That Nick Saldivari.
I couldn't help you on it.
Yeah. So not somebody in the 4th round that you anticipate to come in and immediately help with your offensive line anyway. Not a whole lot of moves on that offensive line, and PFF has them ranked as their 24th rated offensive line headed into this season. Is that going to be enough to really truly be successful and have an opportunity to win this division?
It's certainly a question because it's been a little more offensive than a lie in the last few years, I think. And a lot of that has to do with injuries, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, Nick Saldivari, I think I could be butchering that, he injured his calf.
Way better than when I tried it.
So we haven't really seen anything from him either. But you have to kind of realize that I'm hoping that the trajectory for Trevor Penning is there, because they spent really high capital on that last year and then got absolutely no dividends for that. And that's how injuries go. But they also really, really needed guys on the defensive line almost just as much, where, I think protecting your quarterback is probably the most important, but they've lost so many games. I think I was going to say before, when you guys had all 32 teams, those kind of clips, the 2 clips you saw of the Saints were them chasing around mobile quarterbacks, sort of unsuccessfully, although Lamar Jackson is a little difficult, but just containing a pocket has been such a problem for them that I don't mind the invested capital there, especially because they weren't reach-based picks. They didn't make any trades that were astronomical like we've seen in previous seasons. And I honestly don't know that much about the O-linemen in this last year's class, but it does worry me a little bit that there is a point of training camp where we saw them playing Andres Pete at left tackle and James Hurst at left guard, who, those guys were not playing those roles last season. Maybe it's a good thing if they're just trying things out, but that kind of concerns me of solving a depth issue by moving a very injury-prone Andres Pete over to left tackle kind of thing. So I don't know. The good thing is Derek Carr seems to get the ball out a lot more quickly and can actually offer some things at the line of scrimmage, because you also have to realize that everything that's kind of come out was that there was just no one was picking up the blitzes. No one was adjusting protection last year. And that, to me, is the most important thing of all, is to make sure that Derek Carr and Eric McCoy have that rapport down, because that'll solve a lot of problems, I think, just as much as the depth.
Yeah, it absolutely will. I want to talk about the draft real quick. What was your favorite selection for the Saints this year in the draft?
I'm going to throw a curveball here and say Jake Haener, because I think people have been wanting to see the Saints develop a rookie quarterback for a long time. And I did one of my earlier shows and Before the Whistle about this. I don't remember exactly, but it was something like I looked at the Patriots and how many quarterbacks they've drafted since Tom Brady. And arguably they're the one team that you could have said at that time does not need to worry about the quarterback role at all. And yet There was a second round pick, third round, several fourth round picks. And then the Saints, I think, have had 2 fourth round picks and then 6th and 7th round pick guys in the last 15 years. So we haven't even really seen them try outside of Ian Book. And I don't know, what shake he was going to get in that situation, but I think they got him at a good role and they don't have to worry about immediately slotting him in. So now we can kind of see that rookie process develop. And that's something I think also as media, you kind of just want to see eventually and be able to look at that just as much as it was annoying, but interesting to cover a quarterback competition. I'm kind of glad that I did because I think it did offer a lot of merit. I think that they got really high value for him. And I really liked what we saw of him down in Mobile. And, he's small. He followed Derek Carr to Fresno State. He grew up watching Drew Brees. I mean, the pieces are all there. So good to, again, have a solidified quarterback room where he doesn't even have to worry about being QB2. They can just worry about his development.
I loved the New Orleans Saints draft. I really did because when I'm looking down the list here, Brian Breezy with his little sister, that whole story, and Clemson, they're going to be a different defense without him stuffing up the middle of that line. I'm from Indiana, so I'm a Notre Dame fan. Isaiah Foskey, Kendre Miller's going to have a real opportunity to step in from possibly day one, depending on the Alvin Kamara situation. Of course, you just mentioned Jake Haener. A.T. Perry gave us an interview at the Senior Bowl, and that dude seems like a guy that's going to be worth rooting for his entire career. So I'm really hoping to see him be able to not only make the squad, but maybe even be able to make a little bit of a difference on the field. Like this is one of those drafts where when this draft was done and I went through the list and I looked at all the teams, I was like, this is a team I'm going to be able to root for. I'm not even an NFC guy. Like I have no reason to root for the Saints personally, but now with this draft, I'm going to be rooting for the Saints. So I'm excited about your draft coming up for sure. But speaking of those top 2 picks, Brian Breezy and Isaiah Foskey, both defensive line guys, both guys that can stuff the middle or get after the quarterback or really just do damage. This is something that this defense really needs. It just seems like the last couple of years, just like the offensive line, this defense has slowly started to take steps backward as they're trying to figure out and work out the kinks since the whole Sean Payton leaving and all that. So I think these are 2 very pivotal pieces to that defense. Did they go out and pick up anybody else on defense that might be able to help them out?
Yeah, so I had Mike Detillier, he's a Saints analyst, down on my show last week, and I really like the way he described it as pajamas and slippers when you're viewing the O-line and D-line during OTAs and minicamp. Really, they're just a sack is them touching someone. So you can really only look at so much. I know that they picked up, I believe it's Nathan Shepard and Kalen Saunders, if I have that correctly. They're 2 defensive linemen. One of them is from Kansas City. And if this might be baseless, but just going off of Tano Passignon, how versatile he was. And just when you look at how teams draft linemen, I think you really want to look at their physical prototype and see if they kind of draft in line with the guys that you're used to seeing on your defensive line. And Andy Reid has been someone that's always valued things like arm length and those types of things that fit well in the Saints defensive system. And so to get those guys over, they needed to replace Shai Tuttle, David Onyemata. That being said, they really weren't getting that much production out of them either. And it kind of goes back to the pandemic almost, where that's kind of where they lost a lot of those depth guys that you don't really think that much about, like Sheldon Rankins, for example. I mean, you probably should think about him a little more, but, he was one of several names, including Trey Hendrickson, that they couldn't retain. And they went from having this formidable defensive line that basically awarded the blueprint to the NFL of how to shut down Tampa Bay and Tom Brady by rushing 4. And it just has not been the same these last 2 seasons. But last year, the run defense started to kind of go by the wayside. And maybe it was the amount of mobile quarterbacks they faced, but you could just tell that they had no depth out there. They weren't getting enough out of Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner for the draft capital they've invested in them. Then you have the geriatric Cam Jordan at this point playing every snap. And these guys that they've drafted to replace him literally can't get on the field. So I appreciated that they didn't overpay for those positions, because the Saints, every year people are going to yell about cap, but I think they did the right thing here by drafting. I think every team should prioritize drafting in the trenches in the first 2 rounds or so if they can. And yeah, I was surprised to see them go D-line twice in a row, but I really respected it. And I think you could see something with Isaiah Foskey adding some kind of blitz pressure packages because they did lose Caden Ellis. Even though he's a linebacker, they still kind of had that versatile blitzing role that I don't think they've really solved that problem of so well. So that's something I'm really looking forward to actually seeing in the preseason, at least, just to see them get real legitimate snaps out there.
So I got a question for you. If you could take salary cap's not an issue, you can just magically pluck 2 players from any other team and put them on the Saints. And it can't be quarterback because I feel like 31 other teams would immediately try to steal Patrick Mahomes. So we can't take a quarterback, but you could take any 2 players from any team and magically, bam, now they're on the Saints. Who would you take and why?
Aaron Donald, because he's Aaron Donald, and I think you could solve a lot of your problems on the defensive line by just slotting him in there. I'm trying to think like who the Saints kind of need. I don't know, give me Deebo Samuel. I think he'd throw a lot of wrinkles up in the Saints game. But that's the thing, I don't think that there's really one position that would solve everything for the Saints. But also, it's kind of those things that it would be a nice addition. I don't know if anything other than quarterback, talking about if they were able to massively upgrade at quarterback. But I think that they're really in a good position here with Derek Carr. They got a tight end that I really like. They have a good running back room. So maybe throw in another defensive lineman out there that I'm totally blanking of, or a really good offensive tackle. That would be ideal because Ryan Ramczyk is kind of on his final years. And again, the fact that I saw musical chairs going on at left tackle is very frightening. So trying to think of whoever would be the best considered left tackle, but I would probably take them.
I don't know.
So we'll take Aaron Donald. We'll add him to the defense. And then we'll take Laramie Tunsil from Houston and add him to your offense.
Perfect.
No, I kind of like the Debo because then now you have 2 Taysom Hills. You've got one.
Yeah, I know.
Side. How are you going to stop that? And then to be fair, I think that Marshawn Lattimore is one of those guys on your very own team that other teams might choose. So a great, not only that, but a great leader in the locker room. So I'm a huge fan of Marshawn Lattimore. If money didn't matter, like you said, George, that would be one of the jerseys I would buy. So all right. Let's look forward to this up-and-coming season real quick before we get out of here. So the up-and-coming season this year, if I look at the schedule here, I don't know if you've looked into the schedule and tried to come up with your own little a personal win-loss record or anything like that. But and I'm not saying you have to come up with a win-loss record, but my question is, looking back on this season after it happens, like we're going to pretend like we're in January and you're looking back on the season, in your mind, what would make a successful season as a Saints fan?
I'm staying away from giving season predictions because I think all of our predictions were horribly off last year. And yeah, that's going to happen, but it's hard when you're kind of not almost trying to be optimistic, but trying to figure out, okay, well, they did all the right things. Everything seems to be going fine. There's not really any adversity that goes on in training camp. So I think it's just kind of the assumption of consistency might have taken things a little too far. But at the end of the day, you could be a Super Bowl caliber team and then just look at the 49ers in 2019 in week 2, where they lost Nick Bosa, so many guys to that week 2 game. And it's just kind of like, all right, well, what was the point of all of our analysis? No, it's kind of a cop out, but I'd say just getting into the postseason would be kind of the goal here. I don't really care how it happens. I've seen the over under something like 9 wins. I think getting over 500 just because the 7 and 9 years, even though it's weird because you can never get a 7 and 9 record again with adding on this game. But I think not being the bottom seed, winning the division would be really, really good. But I just think seeing the postseason and seeing a new coach take that role on, because we haven't seen Dennis Allen in the postseason. And yeah, it's only a second season, but we've seen a lot of things that Sean Payton could cook up in the playoffs. And I would be curious about that. But I think it would really put some foundations down if they were able to go out there, take advantage of, an early schedule of rookie or first year quarterbacks like Jordan Love. Yes, he's not a rookie, but arguably the rookies that have been playing in college have had more, immediate experience than he's had. And then getting Bryce Young early, getting Anthony Richardson early, and just seeing the state of their division. Yeah, they could end up having a really good quarterback in Bryce Young, and Desmond Ridder could turn into something for the Falcons. I will never understand spending a top 10 pick on a running back, but then you have Baker Mayfield out there on the Buccaneers. So the Saints seem to be the most put together veteran team at this point, and it would be good to take advantage of that.
So I'm not an NFC South guy. I don't hate the Falcons, but I so appreciate that comment you just made about Desmond Ridder, about, I guess, maybe, because I feel the same way. Like, who drafts him where they draft him, and they really expect him to be that next guy, and then they didn't even address that position. Now, on the running back end, up until about maybe a month ago, I was in the same boat as you on running backs in the first round, especially early. But I heard something very intriguing on a podcast recently. I forget which one it was, but I wish I could give them credit. But I feel like, and they really spoke to me when they said this. So with the rookie contract, they're guaranteed, they're locked in. That 4 years, that fifth year is optional, and they're playing for dirt cheap money. And then after that, by the time that's done, they're moving on from these running backs. They're not giving them second big contracts anymore unless they're amazing cream of the crop guys. That's why we have all these holdouts with running backs. And so even though that rookie year, those running backs, like, you can get running backs later on to just plug and play and fill in, you're getting them for cheap during the prime of their career, and then you're just letting them go anyway. So from that vantage point, it actually kind of makes sense, but it also kind of shows that you don't really care about your players. So they kind of makes them a crap organization to play for, personally.
To me, my thing is they don't have the luxury to be doing this. Like, a top 10 running back pick is a luxury pick to me. They have so many issues that they have to address, and they've spent top 10 picks the last 2 years picking a tight end and a running back. I mean, it's just the value that you're getting out of those contracts. When you talk about what they're doing with Desmond Ridder, they had an opportunity to take probably a better quarterback in the first round this year, and then really take advantage of that fifth-year option extension there. Because, like you said, it is this unfortunate kind of discard and redraft running backs. And so then you're really not getting that much value out of your first-round contract. I'm just a big draft in the trenches person, especially if you just don't have a team built. But I just think that they've drafted a little insane, just 2 seasons in a row going running back and tight end in the first round when they have no line or really any game plan.
Yeah, I like that. We're not going to see that pushing the running back off to the side with our man Tyjae Spears, though. He's going to prove to him that he's worth it. But so that's all the questions I have. George, do you have any last questions for Maddy?
No, I'm good. But the last one I had was if you could take anybody from another team, who would it be?
Right on. Very good. So we've exhausted all we could out of Maddy Hudak, and that's with her coming in after a very rough week in the sun last week. If you listen to her show, she's been keeping you updated on that a little bit. So I'm glad that you have rebounded. I'm glad you're feeling better, and we greatly appreciate your time. We know that time is money. So thank you so much, guys. Down at the bottom, make sure you hit her up on all of her socials.
Oh, of course. Again, it was my pleasure, and I've gotten my new skin as a sun lizard here in New Orleans. So that was just kind of our preseason, if you will, for training camp.
There you go. Thanks again. And for the viewers, guys, patreon.com/toylistedtitles. Please continue to support us and help us out. You have no idea how much it's meant to us. And we have several shows a week from all different aspects of football. And then Friday night, it's not going to drop until probably Sunday, but Friday night, we're drafting our favorite superheroes. So you're going to see this before that. So if you want to join, DM me at JustinFF_, and we'll get you in on a superhero draft. But here's a final word from my buddy John.
What's up, Title Tribe? We appreciate you watching the show. If you want to catch up on all of our college football content, make sure you subscribe to the CFB Nation by clicking their link below. Make sure you subscribe to the Toilets Titles Podcast Network by clicking our link below. And make sure to catch our other content by watching these videos to the side of me.